Hey, Mark here, and I have a really cool giveaway for you. I have 5 Blu-ray copies of the 2026 film Is God Is up for grabs, and if you'd like to win a copy, just shoot me a message and be like, Mark, I would love to win a copy of Is God Is. It's wonderful. More people need to see it. I love a revenge film. Is God Is rules. So yeah, just shoot me a message and let me know if you'd like to win a Blu-ray copy of Is God Is. The road trip revenge epic Is God Is out now on Blu-ray and DVD. In this critically acclaimed genre-bending thriller, twin sisters with disfiguring burn scars have their world upended when the mother they believe dead reveals their father is responsible. When she orders them to kill him for what he did, they must decide whether to seek vengeance or find mercy. Is God Is, starring Cara Young, Mallory Johnson, Vivica A. Fox, Sterling K. Brown, and Janelle Monáe.
Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me, Megan Hoffmeyer.
Sarah Newark, DJ Valentine, Billy Business, and Brendan Peters. This is Nadia Boetes. This is Nathan Leahy. It's David Cross. It's Jake Lewitt. Norbert Morvan. It's Lisa Leahy. Joey Lewandowski. John Levingood. Professor Mike Dillon. Nick Riak. It's Niall Moore. Eric Hoffmeyer. It's Johnny Nunn. Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man whose favorite film is Attack of the Yakuza Killer from Mars. It's Professor Mike Dillon.
That is a good one.
The guy
we should cover that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, we should just make it up. I've done that before on the show. We've just taken a title and made an entire movie out of it. So, I gotta say, watching Crying Freeman, starring Mark Dacascos, which this is the 5th time he's been on the Movies, Films, and Flicks, and I've covered those 5 movies with 4 different people. So there's like a wide distribution. You and I talked about Drive, but there's a wide distribution of Dacascos fans out there, which makes me very happy. But the guy who says that line is smacking gum the entire scene. And that's just terrible. Not like mise en scène, but the whole scene's taking place. And I think I have a thing called misophonia. I just can't handle people smacking at all. It just drives me. It really messes with me.
Yeah. My least favorite sound in cinema, just generally, is wet mouth kissing.
Oh, yeah.
Just the kind of Foley effect of just you get this, particularly in movies with like teenagers, so like kids. Even episodes of Stranger Things I've seen with these like teenagers having these awkward first kiss encounters, and that wet mouth smacking just ugh.
That's why I like rain kisses, because you just hear the rain as opposed to just the smacking. But
yeah, rain kisses are romantic, but just the awkwardness of just
it's a bad noise. And then if the bad Foley makes it worse, but this whole scene, you're supposed to be paying attention to the dialogue, and I'm just watching this one jabroni smack gum and just mortified by it. So, I'm telling you, if you're on a film, stop smacking gum. I love Catherine Newton. I think she's great, but she smacks gum in Ready or Not 2. And you're just like, why? Like, why do we need to hear this? Like, why do we need to do it?
I suppose it's a shortcut to characterization. If you have a Catherine Newton kind of smacking gum, it's sort of her way of, I don't know, being aloof.
I feel like she can do that well anyway.
Sure.
she's really but yeah, so I just want to get that out of the way. I have that in my notes highlighted. So yeah, the gum smacking guy, I just have stop chewing gum. So if you're listening and you direct a film, people don't need to smack gum unless it's like about the guy who started Big League Chew, then sure. But if it's like a gum inventor biopic, do it.
Or you know how in action films when a hero and a villain are about to square off, and the villain kind of cracks his neck to prepare for the fight, and you know that, okay, that's the villain, he's going to be vanquished. I think maybe there should be a rule: if you're in an action film and you're smacking gum, you gotta die.
That's it. Yep. If you're smacking
or like
gum,
if you're in a war film and someone says, hey, take a look at this photo, I got a girl back home, it's like, well, yeah, that character's going to die. Yeah, get some rules.
If there's ever the Hoff code, I will put that in there, because back in the day, if you were a villain, you had like, if you in the Hays Code, if you did something illegal, you needed to have your comeuppance,
right?
And so that's the Hoff code. If you smack gum, pain, and you can't be and that's it. It's like, well, there's not many rules here except for this one. So yeah, and I was like, if I see it, yeah, I don't think I would want to watch a movie looking for gum chewing. I'd hire someone. But yeah, Crying Freeman, this is awesome.
Yes, hello.
This
is our second Mark Dacascos.
Second, 5th overall. My second Christopher Gans movie. You
It's
know,
also our second Byron Mann movie, if you think about it, because we did Street Fighter.
yes, I love.
Yeah.
I have a theory. Nobody looks good in circular glasses. Those little circles,
Hmm.
except for Byron Mann. I
Ooh,
was
no, Kate Hudson and Almost Famous.
no, I couldn't do it.
No?
No, no. She's like, I don't know if this is the right word, but effervescent. But she's incredible in that movie.
Well, what about Morpheus?
No,
No?
no,
Wow, tough crowd.
no. But Byron, I think, I just don't like him. I think there's a very, I just don't, I've never ever liked them.
We're talking glasses or sunglasses?
Anything.
Anything. Harry Potter.
No,
No? Okay.
I don't know. But Byron Mann does it. If you keep, Morpheus is a good shout. I had to think about that. I'll give him a pass. Harry Potter, they're not sunglasses. They're not meant for style. No, no, can't do it. But yeah, I would say Byron Mann, he's number one.
Okay.
Better than Dacascos. I think Dacascos has a better fake mustache than him in this movie. But
Arguably, I mean, I think I mean, we can get into this in time, but I think Byron Mann kind of steals the show, if
well,
I'm being honest.
I mean, listen, I love Dacascos, but he does sometimes have the tendency to get lost in movies when there are, I'm not going to say, let's say more experienced actors, because I think in this one, Tchéky Karyo, who has the voice of Ron Perlman,
Yeah,
which,
let's talk about that.
and I think the Hanadas as well, like the what Yoko Shimada, I think she's really good. So I think Dacascos looks the part. He looks great. There's an incredible amount of butt shots of him in this movie. He's shirtless for
So
most of
much
it.
butt. So much butt.
So much butt.
Yeah.
It's just him naked on top of a door, like just wearing like a jock strap, which I feel like Deep Blue Sea stole from that shot. But he looks the part. He looks great. But yeah, I think there are better
But
actors.
yeah, but that's all Dacascos is given to do, right? Just look
That's
pretty.
that's
But
true.
he's also kind of a quiet, sensitive killer who a man of few words. And so it's a kind of an unfortunate combination of a role that doesn't give him much to do, plus arguably Dacascos doesn't have much experience and therefore not as much range yet. Because Drive, he really delivers the kicks, but he's also very funny and charming in that, right? When he's singing,
Yes.
that's
Oh,
like that.
the
That's
karaoke.
yeah. So when I say, Mark Dacascos never got his due, and we've had a long conversation about this before, he deserved to be a bigger star. I do recall jumping in and saying, now I don't want to presume that Mark Dacascos wanted a certain level of stardom. He lives out in Hawaii. He doesn't seem as plugged into Hollywood as maybe some others are. So I don't know what he wanted for himself, but he could have been a bigger star and certainly deserved to be. But when I say he deserved to be, it's on the basis of Drive. Like people should have seen Drive and then put him in more things. I would not say that about his performance in Freeman, right?
No, no.
As opposed to like the camera really loves Byron Mann more than Mark Dacascos, I think. Like the way that Byron Mann is permitted to ham it up and he gets these fantastic close-ups in which he's allowed to like glare out a monologue. It's exactly the kind of corniness a movie like this ought to be leaning into. And so I just kind of, upon this viewing, it's been a really long time since I've seen this movie. I kind of came away from it wishing Byron Mann had more going on.
He's the better actor, incredibly handsome man. I didn't mean the pardon the pun. I think Dacascos has that leading man look. I guess just
Yeah,
the
he's prettier.
yeah, he's prettier, and so he gets the lead role. And but yeah, no, Byron Mann steals the show in this. I mean, I love him in Street Fighter too. Street Fighter proved he could be funny and just drop really good, quick dialogue. Like I love him in that movie. But it's tough though because this is Christophe Gans' first feature length. He had done a short, but then he did it's a French Canadian film that takes place in four different countries, and it has an international cast, and it's just written by a Frenchman who grew up loving martial arts films, and so it's this odd mishmash of like John Woo, slow motion,
Mhm.
even a little bit like Point of No Return, like kind of French style like that. And then there's
You
it's a
mean Nikita
yeah,
or
Nikita,
the
sorry,
remake?
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nikita. I don't know, it just has this interesting like it puts visuals in slow motion and nice shots. I think it's much more interested in the shots than it is the action because the henchmen in this film are horrifying. They shouldn't get paid. I think they're maybe interns. I don't know. They just run straight at Dacascos, and that scene when they blow up the cars when he has to kill the Yakuza guy. Like they're coming out of a police station, but it's the Vancouver Art Gallery. And then when they go to a wide shot, you can see people blocking off all the traffic in the background. And then when everything starts exploding, you can see the visible pads on the ground. So it's not like I don't know. I think it's more interested in like the melodrama and Condra and making her look pretty and making Dacascos look pretty. Actually,
Oh,
everyone in this cast gets their moments to look, gorgeous. But yeah,
well,
but I think that's why it's
so
good and has a personality because it's like a hybrid of so many different countries and
uh,
influences.
yeah, agree and disagree. Because on the
Hmm.
one hand, I do like that hodgepodge quality of it. I think it reflects a certain tendency of the 90s that we can get into. Insofar as we haven't already covered a lot of this stuff. It's the kind of angle that attracts my attention the most. But at the same time, he's doing such a hackneyed homage to John Woo.
Yes.
And for that reason, it does feel really stale to me. I mean, the way in which Christophe Gans like uses dissolves and slow motion as a substitute for emotional intensity to me seems very hackish. I think the later collaboration with Dacascos, which is Le Pacte
Brotherhood.
de Loup,
Yeah.
yeah, it works because it takes all that silliness and puts it in such an improbable setting, which is pre-revolutionary France. And the result of that mishmash is unusual enough and nutty enough to kind of work. But here he's doing something a bit more conventional. It's a much more sort of direct uh, kind of copying of John Woo's template. And he's working within a genre as opposed to the kind of genre bending nature of Le Pacte de Loup, which
Yeah.
makes it kind of unique and strange. This one just, I don't know that this movie distinguishes itself that much from other films going on throughout the 90s. And of course, even earlier, if you incorporate the early John Woo stuff.
I mean, this one walked so Brotherhood of the Wolf could run. It really did. And you can
Yeah.
and but I think it's his first feature and he just loved he said he was a movie critic. He started a magazine, Starfix, and then he just said he wanted to make this because he loved the genre. So it's a young guy who doesn't have his style yet, mimicking other people's styles not as well. But I think but it's odd enough to work for me. Like just at least I think you're right. This is not the act. None of the action in this movie is exemplary. None of it's really great, but I still think it has a personality to it, and I kind of like that. It just whether it's Ron Perlman's voice or Deborah Kara Unger um, voicing over Condra's narration, and just all the slow motion. And I don't like. I guess we don't really do this on the show, but if you break down the action scenes in this movie, they make no sense. I mean, when
They
he
make no sense.
yeah, when he climbs on the door to do a flip, that's a tall ceiling, by the way. He kicks a
Well,
guy.
although, yeah, I think, when he climbs up on a door in a jockstrap, I mean, that's such a great sentence that I even just uttered, right? That's the kind of energy that this movie needs more of because, well, the movie itself is so serious, right? It's so self-serious, and to have a scene like that, which kind of pushes it into kind of wacky territory, that's the stuff that I like more of because of the improbability of it.
And they never thought about, I don't think they thought about that on set. They're like, let's just make this look awesome. So when Byron Mann has a sniper rifle and the Yakuza are leaving the building, they call them another name. It's what? There's the Sons of the Dragons, and then there's another group.
There's like the 108 or something
Yeah,
like that.
I have them. Yeah, I have them in my notes here. But like when they're leaving,
Not that it matters,
yeah,
Mark. Does it matter?
just
Does
yeah,
it matter what sort of
Hakushin,
like
like
the eighth century Chinese triads are at work here? Like,
but they can grab anybody
who
who's like
cares?
English or Japanese or American that they can become the Freeman.
Hmm.
But okay, but he's shooting out cars, but he has a sniper rifle where he could have killed the head of the Hakushin society. So like he
Well,
blows up
he's there. Yeah, he's there to assist, but it's not clear why aren't you
shooting
taking
him.
shots? There's an even more egregious moment when in Julie Condra's mansion, the big Yakuza baddie has the drop on Dacascos, and Byron Mann shows up, stabs the guy, and then tosses a gun to Dacascos to handle it himself. The much quicker and more efficient thing to do would have just been to shoot the guy. from behind, but
Yeah.
he's there in an assist capacity only, it seems.
Just kill him. And it's,
Well, if there's some rule about like no,
yo,
you
okay.
do not interfere with the Freeman's work, that's part of the I don't know the guidelines. Then because Byron Mann is all about no, I'm duty bound. You have to follow the rules. These are written in stone. Then maybe that would make more sense. But yeah, it leads to incoherent action. There's also just some dumb moves, right? When he at the end, that final move when he tosses the dagger in the air and then catches it, it's so dumb.
These henchmen are terrible. They are.
His
These,
henchmen are terrible. Yeah, when he's fighting with the bows and arrows, lucky for him that the environment is so target rich for dumb henchmen who stand around and gawk while their guys are dropping one by one. And then the camera reveals to pulls back to reveal that Dacascos is like 20 feet away. He's just standing right there, just picking them off.
and he stands in a one spot and he's just turning around shooting people.
Yeah.
It's, all right, so Punisher Warzone. In the beginning of the film, the 6'4", 250-pound Ray Stevenson grabs a chandelier and puts his legs in it and starts spinning and shooting these mafia members. And that scene works because it's insane. Like that is, while watching it, I went, is Ray Stevenson upside down shooting people? Like, and it's so silly and gonzo. That's why it works, because it's so heightened. But in this one, everything is so serious that
Yeah.
I just began to wonder if the Freeman is good at what he does, or the people he's killing are bad at what their jobs, like, or the henchmen are bad at theirs. So it's, but okay, action's bad, but I think that gives it a personality. There's a scene where a henchman has a shotgun. He's wearing glasses. He falls, blows out a window, and then falls onto a glass table. Like the amount of glass involved in that scene made me laugh. And just, yeah, I don't know. But I'm gonna say it again. It's a first time director, and he was just mimicking John Woo. And so,
Yeah. If you look at this in context, right? No, sorry, Christophe Gans. I almost got him confused with Javier Jans, who's a totally different director. But Christophe Gans is one of several sort of French action directors who are just kind of figuring out their way, trying to adopt a signature vision throughout the 90s. So I don't know if you're familiar with like Jan Konen, who directed The Doberman, which also has Tchéky Karyo in it. That's a fun one. Or even, I don't know, even Luc Besson, throw that into that mix, right? They're all trying to find ways to kind of over aestheticize their action films to kind of mask the fact, sorry, that they're kind of hacks. Unlike, say, like Gerard Perez, who directed Taxi, who's sort of a much more workman, like Simon West type figure. It's like
oh,
I'm not over aestheticizing everything. You're gonna get action, you're gonna get comedy, boom, done. No fuss, no muss. It's the kind of attempt to be artsy about it that frustrates me more than just like let's deliver on the action. Let's give you some good stunts, good beats, which this movie does have a few. There's at least one really great shot, which is when the Byron Mann kills a Yakuza so and so. He's making him like set up a meeting on the phone, and he's got a prostitute girlfriend. And Freeman, do you remember the shot? He's
yeah, yeah,
insists
yeah.
like, no, don't kill her. She knows the rules of the underworld, right? It's all done in a single take with this conversation between Byron Mann and Mark Dacascos happening in one part of the frame, and the girl is reflected in the mirror in another part of the frame, and it's all done in shot. And that's a great bit of visual storytelling, all done in one shot, right? And so it does have some talent, some promise, but just when you go down into the action beats, it just sort of, I don't know, kind of falls apart, or it's just too much slow motion. You can't really appreciate the fact that you have a genuine martial artist and athlete in your lead star. Like there's very little in here that indicates what a talent Mark Dacascos is until of course you get Drive.
Do you think it's because, I mean, 1990s French cinema, there weren't that many action films. I mean, you had Nikita, Leon, but those are still very art house type
Mm-hmm.
films. And I think, maybe if you're working in Hong Kong or America or India, there's so much more production and action films and stunt people. And, action is just more of a regular type film out there. But in France, I don't think, horror directors talk about that. I mean, there was like the French New Wave horror in the 2000s, but a lot of French directors who make horror, they're like, yeah, it doesn't really happen out here. So there aren't too many French action films. So this guy, I mean, there were, like you said, Taxi and a few other movies, but this guy wasn't exactly, he didn't really have many people to, he could have collaborated with other action coordinators, but I don't think he, do you get what I'm trying to pick up here? I don't think he had much of an infrastructure in France to learn and like coordinate or find collaborators to work with. And so like that's why his action in this is not very good. But I do think, you know, a lot of French films, when you look at the horror films, they're gorgeous to behold, or they have a message, or they build to something really visually interesting. So he's making this, you know, a first time director. I think he really wanted to make something visually interesting, mimic John Woo, make it his own thing, and then just try, but he didn't have like the assets to do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure because on the one hand, insofar as it's a French production, yeah, it makes sense that he wouldn't have had those exact resources, but it's also clearly collaborating with, Chinese resources, Hong Kong
True.
resources because
Yeah.
of its cast and its location. So it just it does make me think, okay, well, this was entirely shot in Montreal or some
Yeah.
someplace like that, and the Shanghai locations and all that, these are just pickup shots, and there really isn't that much involvement from that side of things. There is some good stunt work in key places, but overall, yeah, the action, it's not that the action is underwhelming across the board, it's that it has a few good, it has enough good beats to make you think, well, then why is it so mediocre in these other parts?
Yeah, because you can
Like the
see the
blowtorch,
lockups.
the blowtorch move where they've got these pills that contain, I don't know what, napalm or something like that, and they're just like, that's a really memorable action beat. I like also when Mark Dacascos is doing the kind of no look shooting outdoors, and he's taking out, a couple dozen henchmen. Like, it's nutty and it's improbable, but it's sort of okay, there's some creativity here. You guys had an idea that perhaps had not been seen before, or at least not been seen quite in that way, and you went for it. And that's the stuff that I remember the most. The other stuff, like when Byron Mann is sniping the gas tanks of all these limousines and Mark Dacascos is just running and gunning, like nothing in that, it doesn't make sense. The action design is not particularly interesting. It's too much slow-mo to kind of hijack any momentum, and just there isn't much physical prowess. And he's in a mask the whole time, which makes you wonder, is Mark Dacascos even really doing it? Because, if you're gonna wonder, okay, well, he's wearing a mask, you want it to be because the stunt work is so intense. You think like, okay, well, that there's no way Mark Dacascos was doing that because that flip move is too crazy. And there's nothing like that in there, right?
And he does the classic jump in front of a guy, but he kind of jumps right at him, which doesn't make you harder to shoot, I don't think. And maybe it makes it easier when you jump straight in a line at somebody. It's
Yeah, the spatial geography of the fighting is just kind of poor, and it's not aided by all the excessive slow-mo, because you really start to lose track of where people are in relation to each other. All you're seeing is, okay, well, no one is hitting him and he's hitting everybody one after the other.
this was the era though where there were people who were better at it than others. Like I think Desperado and El Mariachi. I think Robert Rodriguez did a pretty good job of not mimicking, but coming up with a gun style fighting that worked on screen. There's movies like The Big Hit, which
Mhm.
is just Aaron and I are covering that on the show. He got tired of doing action drafts and he has to cover a single film, so he wants to do The Big Hit. But like they were trying to figure out that style. So it just seemed like people all over the world were trying to figure it out what John Woo
Yeah,
did.
I think that's a great point. I think like Desperado though, there's an understanding in Desperado and Mariachi that like we're having fun with this. We're being goofy. You're allowed to kind of laugh at this. It's badass, but it's also preposterous at the same time. I think that's where this movie gets it wrong, right? It doesn't have the kind of tongue-in-cheek energy that it needs to, given how ridiculous this is. And it's very serious. It's about regret and pathos and trauma, and he sheds a single tear because his humanity kind of pokes through every time, like, I don't know, like a teardrop tattoo, that's the stuff, the self-seriousness of this, which I think there's an element of kind of oriental racism involved. It's like, well, this is about ancient Chinese traditions, and in Asia, people are so stoic and they bottle it up inside, and that's what an Asian action star consists of. It's not like a Antonio Banderas wink wink, I'm going to play a guitar and then smack you on the head with it. There is a sense of like somber self-seriousness that I think is attributed to kind of the Asianness of the story, that I think is kind of culturally a little bit presumptuous as well, which is very 90s. I think it makes sense for the era that people assume that like a Yakuza film has to be really intense and glaring and scowling, as opposed to kind of wink wink charming. You know,
Didn't
like you have a really handsome, charming actor. It takes a few more movies to realize, I think, just, I mean, what, Only the Strong, he's got a lot of promise. Double Dragon, he's fun, but it's really not until Drive that you realize like Mark Dacascos belongs in a romantic comedy
hmm
alongside a kung fu action film. He has a lot of range. It just no one ever really capitalized on him, which is why it's a shame that so few people know who he is. But based in this film, like they just don't know what to do with him because they just plug him into this like really self-serious mold the whole time.
and it was based on a manga. I don't know if you ever read it, but
Yeah, it was a little, yeah, it's a little before my time. I
oh,
remember
okay.
it. I remember glimpsing it like in bookstores and things like that, but it was a little ahead of my time. It's also, it was never very mainstream. I think it's a bit cult.
Oh, okay. But yeah, it is very self-serious. The monologuing, but then there's just an incredible amount of butt shots in it too. It's an odd it's an odd little movie. I know I keep going back
It's
to that,
odd, yeah. It's
but it
also got one of the unsexiest love
oh
scenes,
yeah,
maybe
that's
this side of
bad.
Rapid Fire. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no movement, there's no passion, and yet he's covered in sweat, right? The shot of his back, like the tattoo is magnificent, but he's so sweaty, and it's like, why are you sweaty? You haven't even started yet,
They got
you
married
know?
after this. So Mark
Oh yeah,
Dacascos, yeah, he ended up marrying Julie Condra in this film.
I believe they're still married too.
Yeah, and she popped up in his latest films, which makes me happy. But yeah, they had three kids. But like yeah,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
could
she's stunningly beautiful.
yeah, she
Um,
the amount of time spent on her just glory shot. Like, if you took out the glory shots in this movie, that just like this movie's very interested. Like even Yoko Shimada, I think they spent up a lot of time shooting her. I think Czeky, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this, Karyo, like spent a
yeah,
lot
it's
of
a
time on him.
Carrillo.
Yeah, Carrillo.
Yeah.
You know, they even Byron Mann, I think they spend a lot of time shooting these really attractive people. But Julie Condra gets, I would say, at least 3,000 glory shots in this movie. But you could tell that he was clearly the director and DP were clearly in love with the character or just filming her. And I think the same with the Dacascos as well. But yeah, it's yeah, the amount of time they film her walking around. But yeah, she looks great on screen. She puts
The
her easel
movie,
in
yeah.
terrible places, though. Professor Mike Dillon. Her,
Well, yeah,
her
it's I mean, first of all, her character makes no sense to
none.
begin with, right? The relationship makes no sense
No.
at all. But I mean, who is this woman? Does she not have a job? They portray her as this sort of like princess trapped in a castle. And of course, what's she doing standing on the side of a cliff, as you say, painting when an assassin comes through? It's just
A
the whole
windy
thing is
cliff.
a windy cliff. There's no sense of who this person is or why, you know. I looked this up because, like I said, I'm not that familiar with the manga, but in the manga, she's it happens just like it does in the film. She just happens to be minding her own business when an assassin comes through, and she becomes an inadvertent witness. So she knows that this Freeman, this elite assassin, is going to come and hunt her down because she's the one person who can identify him. And then when he does arrive, she says, listen, I accept my fate. My life is meaningless anyway. You can kill me, but I have one favor I'd like to ask. And he says, what is that? And he says, I don't want to die a virgin. Will you make love to me first? And he obliges, but then inadvertently falls in love with her. That's literally the story of the Crying Freeman source novel, which is not that dissimilar from this.
Well, he just takes off his clothes in front of her.
Yeah.
Like they don't really talk much. She's just laying there, and then he does that, and then they hook up.
Mark, there's a silent understanding, you
Oh
see.
god.
Yeah.
Yeah. They fall in
There's a
love
moment just
immediately.
like this. Yeah, there's a moment just like this in Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead. I don't know if you've ever read that, but there's a scene, it's very, very controversially referred to as the benevolent rape, which is that he forces himself on her, but it's okay because he somehow knew that that's what she
Oh
secretly wanted, right?
no.
It's very icky. But I mean, it's weirdly anticipated because she clearly kind of falls in love with him to begin with because like think about we're talking about Christophe Gans is clearly putting a lot of energy into photographing beautiful people, right? Beautiful faces, beautiful bodies. There is a real fetishization of Mark Dacascos's body, just all through the opening credits.
And
It's just
Brotherhood of the Wolf.
close-ups.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
4 minutes of it.
absolutely, Brotherhood. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the moment when she pops the champagne all over the painting of him, and it's all in slow motion and there's jazz music and the close up of the bottle spraying all over the place. I was like, wow, this is a bit early for a full cum shot,
Yeah.
you know?
Imo Ohara is a solid painter, by the way. That's a not like that's from memory, Professor Mike Dillon, and that's a gorgeous little painting she does of
Hmm.
Yo. So she's very talented. She reminded me of like a Tim Burton girl, but
Maybe she has like a photographic memory.
she's just like how Tim Burton likes to film women with like really big eyes and like certain looks, but the way that she's fetishized
Yeah, so
reminds me of
much so
like
he made a movie called Big Eyes.
exactly. It gave me that vibe from, but I mean, I guess if you're gonna bring in a character who's so stunningly gorgeous that she can that mind control stops working on a legendary killer, I guess you need to sort of fetishize her to create the beautiful character, because he doesn't listen to his programming anymore after he meets her. Like, they're like, kill her, and he's like, nah, I'm not doing that.
This is a little bit of an aside, but it's to reinforce your point. Did Tim Burton did not, I know it's Barry Sonnenfeld, but did Tim Burton have any producing credit on the Addams Family movies? Sorry, this is a little tangential,
I
but
mean, he
I don't
had to
think
have.
so, right?
Wait, I thought he did the Addams Family movies.
No, Barry Sonnenfeld directed them, but I'm
Really?
wondering if he maybe executive produced. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh wow.
Well, the reason I'm wondering is because to me, when you say like, oh, the big eyes, especially in a film that is directly inspired by sort of Japanese anime and things like that, Christina Ricci is like the perfect person, like these big
Yeah.
round eyes, right? And it really struck me at the time that how is it Tim Burton has not worked with Christina Ricci before until like Sleepy Hollow. I remember when Christina Ricci was in the Speed Racer movie, I thought, oh, well, obviously she already has the eyes of an anime character. How has nobody kind of utilized this before? Right. And so the kind of big eyes thing, most definitely Tim Burton is, it seems like something he would be attracted to because of its kind of expressionistic quality. But here, yeah, if you're doing a Japanese anime adaptation, then I think that look, finding actors who have that look, I think make a lot of sense.
And I think she does have the kind of anime look in this. Does she, would
Julie
you?
Condra?
Yeah, Condra. Just the nose, the like very slight features. Like looks like a
Hmm.
traditional actress who's very like proportionally sized but tiny.
Yeah, okay, so you're getting into a kind of a profound debate among, I mean, maybe we're 10 years past this debate, but for a while when Japanese anime really started making inroads into American pop culture, so we're getting that initial wave would have been there's two phases to the wave. The first is the kind of like Akira and Ghost in the Shell. These movies would play on college campuses and people would kind of perk up and be like, wow, Japanese cartoons are very different from American ones, right? They're for grown-ups. But then the second wave was like Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, these types of things, more fantasy oriented things that appeal to kids. And this question of why do Japanese artists draw their characters with such wide eyes? The anime eyes are so big and glistening, right? And there was an initial kind of very hackneyed interpretation, which is like, well, deep down in the Japanese subconscious, everyone wants to be Western because the beauty standard is wide eyes. And then people tie that to like one of the most famous statistics out there is pertaining to this kind of thing is that I don't know the exact numbers, but the number one most popular type of surgery, cosmetic surgery in Asia is the eyes, right? The unfolding the eyelids and making your eyes look more Western. Larger eyes is the idea. And so people point to these sort of tangential pieces of information and say, oh, deep down, people in the East kind of have a subconscious desire to look more Western, and that's reflected in anime. I always felt that was kind of a reach because like yeah they have big eyes but I don't know any Western people with eyes that big, I don't know. and
Exactly. Yeah.
and you know
Yeah.
and like the big purple hair and all the different attributes, like no, I think this is a style rooted in exaggeration and hyperbole and aesthetics. It's not necessarily pointing to a kind of a deeper cultural strain of self, I don't know, self westernization or whatever you want to call it. And so that ends up being kind of interesting in the 90s when these theories about like what is the kind of undergirding philosophy of why anime looks this way is that these are all Japanese characters, but they're being cast with Western actors, right? Who
Mhm.
naturally have like a wider set of eyes than your kind of prototypical, sorry to be stereotypical, but Asian actors. And so I mean, what's her name again? Emu. Oh,
Ohara.
oh, yeah. I mean, It's his preposterous name. I mean, Tchéky Karyo plays a Japanese detective, right? Nida, is that his name? These are all Japanese characters, but they're casting them with Western actors, and there's something kind of fascinating about that in terms of does the original facial features of the source material kind of lend itself already toward Western casting than indigenous Japanese casting because of the natural aesthetic that it adopts? Like, I think that's kind of an interesting question.
I mean,
Sorry to be so roundabout, but
no. I mean, Alita Battle Angel as well, right? They cast Rosa
oh
Salazar,
yeah, yeah.
and her eyes were too big to begin with, I think, and then they had to they had to make her eyes smaller after a lot of
Yeah,
cost after
that
the
that
first
that
trailer,
seemed like a real that seemed like a real nod to the aesthetic
and then people went,
of
no,
anime.
no, make it smaller. But yeah, they cast her. That's interesting because okay, so you're saying the eyes that they draw are more similar to the Western kind of,
Well,
and
I'm
it
saying
alludes itself.
there's been a several decades long discourse about
Yeah,
whether or not the fact that the anime style involves such big round eyes could be attributable to sort of cultural attitudes about beauty standards and things like that, which people point to like the kind of eyelid surgery that's so common. It's much more common in Korea
yeah.
than in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. But does that point to some kind of subconscious kind of beauty standards going on in the respective cultures? And is that legible in the style of anime? Some people say yes, some people say no. But in the 90s, when anime was first blowing up and people were kind of searching for explanations as to what makes anime so interesting, what makes anime so uniquely Japanese, people were kind of pointing at those aesthetic features and coming up with these sort of easy explanations, which I think have since been rejected because they're too easy and you got to complicate things a little bit more. But circa 1995, I think it would have fit in that mold to have these Japanese characters, but they don't look Japanese. They just have Japanese names. So cast a Julie Condra.
She kind of looks like the
It kind of
character
makes
here.
sense.
Yeah, her features look startlingly like the animated or the manga character.
Yeah,
I'm looking
especially
at her now.
80s manga, you get the very pointy noses and the big wide eyes. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
Condra has
kind
the
of
classic nose. I don't know what to call the nose that she has, but that's like an actress nose.
mhm.
I don't know what it is, not pointed up, but yeah, she looks like the animated character though. That's for sure. So all right, so you haven't read the manga, so I guess I was thinking about picking
No.
it up for this, but I didn't do it. But this is, and I think all these decisions that you're talking about came to make a weird hybrid of a movie that you can't, it didn't really get distributed here. I didn't even know this movie existed until a few years ago when I started covering Dacascos films on the podcast. Like this movie just did not exist here. I guess it only was released in 2018. How long? When did you first watch this?
I saw it when it came out.
Oh wow.
I couldn't pinpoint exactly, but it's funny because I have since become a big Czechi Karyo fan. I don't know if you've seen Doberman. Yeah, so it's kind of a contemporary of this film. Jan Konen is this kind of interesting director at the time. I know Gaspar Noé is a fan of Jan Konen, but I had such an oh shit moment because I had forgotten, or maybe I didn't even realize at the time. I was too young to realize it's all ADR. Well, so I saw it early enough that I don't think it registered because I don't know that I would have known who Ron Perlman was. And even if I did, because I saw it this time and I thought, wait, hang on a second. Czeky Karyo sounds French as shit, and that's not what he sounds like. I'm like, why does he sound like Ron Perlman? And I looked it up, and I didn't realize all this time it was Ron Perlman doing ADR. But then I kind of forgave myself because I thought, well, when I first saw this in 95, 96 at the latest, I would not have known Ron Perlman from anything apart from City of Lost Children or maybe Quest for Fire, neither in which he has any dialogue. So I think I knew instantly this time around it's not Czeky Karyo's voice, but yeah, it's not something I would have placed at the time. So I mean, do you think Ron Perlman is still collecting Freeman residuals?
It's got to be.
Gotta be, right? I mean, however many there are.
Gives like a 2 cent check every other month or every
2 cent,
year.
2 cent Checky.
Yeah, 2 cents.
So did you see the Crow, the recent Crow? The
No,
one
no,
with
I
Skarsgård?
couldn't do it. It just looked.
It's bad. It's as bad as they say. However, there is one moment. That movie has like a weird visual fetish over tattoos. There's a lot of just loving shots. He's covered in tats, and the camera loves to kind of glide over his body to show all them. And so there is a couple scenes in a tattoo parlor. It's like someone's apartment, but he's like a tattoo artist. And I did clock there is a Crying Freeman poster on the wall. Just it's just
What?
part of the set decor.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I said, oh, hang on a second. That's a fun reference because
I'm,
Dacascos, played Eric Draven in the Crow TV show.
and he has a sweet tattoo in this movie.
So there's just kind of, yeah, very a knowing wink to that, and I caught that. I was on the pod with Aaron and Abe on the Out Now podcast, and we were talking about The Crow, and I noted that detail, and they had no idea what I was talking about, but I felt a little seen by that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so I'm still not gonna watch it, but I like that Crying Freeman is referenced in it, so that makes me happy. But it's what were your so like in '95, I learned Karyo. I think that's the way you say it. Sorry, but I that's when I was introduced to him. '94 was Jean Reno. I don't think I was familiar with Vincent Cassel until Matrix Reloaded. That's when he
Vincent
popped.
Cassel?
Yeah, I don't think
He's not in the Matrix.
no, I'm just saying. No, Vincent. Yeah, in the second one, is he not? Oh no, the
The,
Merovingian.
the
And
Merovingian is I
yeah,
don't remember his name, but
yeah. Wow, I just matrix myself into believing that. But yeah,
you
I,
you red pilled yourself, or is it
I
blue pill?
yeah,
I
blue
don't
pill.
know.
But yeah, French cinema
Such
was.
a bro.
I think I only learned about, I only learned about them really when like French New Wave came out, like High Tension. Like that was sort of my first experience
Oh, you mean
or
the new extreme?
yeah, the new extreme, yeah. And
Yeah.
like Brotherhood of the Wolf, I saw in the theater. And that was Vincent Cassel was in that one. And I only watched that because Mark Dacascos and Monica Bellucci were in it. So
Hmm.
that was like yeah, French cinema, even with this director was not something I really thought about until I would say the 2000s. And then maybe in the last like 10 years with Celine Sciamma and
Uh-huh.
Julia Ducournau. Oh man, the lady who did Revenge, which I love so, in The Substance. Yeah,
Coralie.
Fargeau, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's yeah. I guess French cinema I've been much more into lately. I watched
Well, in
District
terms of
B13. That was an action
uh-huh.
film, but yeah, that's. I know I'm getting off track, but I'm just kind of talking about like French cinema in general and
Yeah, yeah.
how.
Well, in terms of French action cinema, like you and I know you would have known in the 90s at least like Christopher Lambert,
Oh, that's true. But I guess I
right?
never associated him with being French.
Well, that's because I mean he's someone who's like doing just legit Hollywood productions, right?
Yeah,
Despite
yeah.
being French. So I don't necessarily associate him as being as I don't associate him with a lot of French cinema. I associate him with just being a French guy who was just popping up in like Fortress and Mortal Kombat, right? So
Highlander, that was a big part of
and
my
Highlander,
youth.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
What a
of
great
course.
idea. And I guess, Luc Besson, I think, was probably my first because you have, like Fifth Element and his visual style was just so out there for me. So maybe that's like a guy who opened up my world to kind of French cinema. But
Yeah, you want a fun fact? And just to remind viewers, I grew up in Tokyo. Leon the Professional, massive hit
yeah,
in Japan. Like it became a cultural thing in '94. For decades,
what made it
whenever
connect?
I, I I can't really say. I'm not sure what it was about that film, but for years and years, like Natalie Portman and Jean Reno they'd come out to Japan and do commercials like coffee commercials and all kinds of products because that association. And even after Natalie Portman is in Star Wars movies, whenever she's in a new movie, it would what's a Natalie Portman movie
Closer.
like yeah, closer. They say like starring Natalie Portman from Leon, like
Oh,
well after her adulthood, like maybe probably not so much anymore. It's been a long time, but for years and years, there's like starring Jean Reno, from The Professional, starring Natalie Portman from The Professional. Just everyone had that association. Those movies, that movie in particular, was huge.
that movie sort of blew the doors off for me when I was 12 because what Gary Oldman was doing, like the sense of, like, I know the subplot, but yeah, oh
Everyone.
my gosh. And just yeah, like that used to get played when we were on film sets sometimes. We're like, who do you need? And then someone would pull that up and do everyone. Like that was fun. Like that movie gets quoted all the time. But like, I'm Natalie Portman's age, so I thought she was incredible. I never thought about like the ickiness of the situation, like kind of modeling for this guy, but because Jean Reno was like so sensitive and like, but yeah, that movie really stuck with me. So
I
I mean,
think, yeah, I think the text works. I think that movie mostly works. It's when you take context into consideration. So I think people read into that. Of course, there's a much more heightened sensitivity around sort of these exploitative relationships, which I think is important. And so people look at that and find it kind of pedophilic. But I don't think the relationship necessarily lends itself to that if you look at the film. Now, I my understanding is that people have since found that the original script was much more explicitly pedophilic. That sexual dynamic of the relationship is more harder to ignore in some earlier versions of the script. And then, of course, like
Luc
I think
Besson's history.
Luc Besson, his history with Mila Jovovich and things like that. So people take all these as context clues to determine that Leon does have some kind of authorial intent by the director. That's a little bit icky. But if you can kind of, I'm not saying you should ignore all those factors in your reading strategy around the professional, but if you can look past that and just look at the film independent of all that context, I don't think it's really fair to determine that the character Leon is actually in love with this girl.
And the
That there
way
is
he,
that it's much more of a father-daughter dynamic than it is a romantic dynamic.
I
I
agree.
think that's a fair reading if you are willing to look past sort of the Luc Besson of it all.
And the way Jean Reno plays it, he's not like innocent in the movie, but he doesn't play it. If it was
Yeah.
another actor, I don't think they would have made it work.
Well,
Like
the other thing about his portrayal of that character that I don't think we didn't quite have the vocabulary in our culture to read it this way, but if you look at it now, it does lend itself toward an interpretation that Leon, the character, is neurodivergent,
yeah, yeah,
right? And
I
that
agree.
kind of complicates any sense of like, well, is he taking in this girl out of a sense of sympathy, or is it kind of there's an intimacy and an affection toward them that isn't necessarily sexual, but depending on the kind of nature of his neurodivergence, if you want to even go in that direction, you kind of have to wonder like, well, what is his understanding of what this relationship is? So I think yeah, that's a movie that kind of lends itself to different reading strategies over time, which kind of makes it interesting in ways that I don't think Fifth Element is. I was always sort of an anti Fifth Element a person. I think that movie's nonsense, but
The way Natalie Portman though was so good in that movie, where she's knocking at the door crying, like "Let me in," and she just sells it. So I think for me, I never thought about it because I'm like, this girl's awesome. Even in Beautiful
mhm.
Girls, she was so charming. And then I got older and I thought about it. I'm like, wait a second. So yeah, she had some interesting roles when she was 12 and 13. But yeah, back to back to the crying. There's not much to Crying Freeman because there's a lot of like,
Well, it's because Mark Dacascos clearly cannot cry on demand,
yeah.
right? There that the single tear in every scene is so obviously
Yeah,
some kind of saline gel.
Visine, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And also too, they get mad at him because he starts going rogue, but they kidnapped him and then they programmed him to go kill this Italian guy in a very hackneyed plot to stab him with a flour knife and then
Yeah.
hope that guards are standing near fire to blow them up. So that's most of
It's very Nikita, right? In
yeah.
terms of we're gonna send you on your first mission
And
in this
it's
sort of swanky restaurant. Now
and then
the dynamic in Nikita is that she doesn't realize that the gun isn't loaded. So it's like you're gonna have to improvise, but we're not gonna tell you that. Am I remembering that correctly? But
I don't remember.
yeah. What really bugs me is we're gonna send you off, we're gonna train you or hypnotize you to becoming this master assassin, but we're not gonna give you a single suit that fits. His wardrobe is awful, Mark.
Yeah. Well, I think 90s was big. Like even Czeky
Oh God,
has
the thing
a
not
gigantic suit.
it makes me not nostalgic for the 90s. Just I don't miss the shoulder pads.
Yeah. And Ray Don Chong too. They don't really do her any favors with her outfit. They're basically just worried about Julie Condra in
Right.
this movie, as far as
Well,
like the
Radon
dresses.
Chon disappears as quickly as like Casey Lemons in Hard Target.
Oh gosh, yeah, she's great in that movie, and then she's just never there. But it's I liked her a lot with her cake. Listen to the Hard Target episode; it's released. It's very good. But then
Oh,
they
is it
get
out?
yeah, it's out. Yeah, yeah, released this
Yeah,
week.
check it. I recall really having fun in that conversation.
But
Yeah, you know
they
what? Another quick comparison to Hard Target. If I remember the details of our conversation, I mean I don't know how much you might have edited out, but I think another problem with this film is that, and it's a reflection of its budget, if nothing else. But there's no sense of location.
mm-mm.
We get these boring title cards that say Shanghai, China. And I'm just like, right, as opposed to Shanghai, Egypt. Thanks for the clarification. But like in Hard Target, you really feel the heat and grime of New Orleans right in really
Yeah,
visceral ways that help kind of produce this atmosphere. Here, apart from the second unit shots that situate us in all these cities. But then they move right into these nondescript locations. It's all very bland and flat. I like that you get some variations in the spoken languages. This is a movie that does require subtitles, but it does add to the international flavor, but none of the locations do in this film.
Do you think? And I guess I'm not. Yeah, there's no like when she goes to his place and it has all the statues, and then they go to the Yakuza facility, and then they go to Vancouver. Yeah, there's no. They're really no. There's no sense of scale, and there's probably too
Yeah,
many characters, don't you think? Like Yoko Shimada, like Kimi Hanada, and her husband who want to take over. They're good, but I don't know why they're in it. And then there's like they went after the 108, and then but then there's
yeah, I
check.
mean,
There's a lot of characters in this movie.
I think there is an interesting dynamic because there's the Yakuza boss and his wife, who is sort of a Lady Macbeth. She's scheming on her own end. And then in the end, are we doing spoilers?
Yeah, still full
Yeah, he
spoilers.
yeah, he offers her this choice, right? You can die right here, or we can strike a deal. You're gonna let me disappear, and you're gonna get as a result what you really want, which is to take over the organization now that your husband is dead. And so she pursues power over honor or something like that, right? And I think that there's an interesting dynamic there. So I do like that character. Probably I like her enough that I would have liked to have seen her be a bigger character.
And she
And
gets a better
she
sex
would
scene
be.
than
She gets the much better sex scene. Although that's a weird scene
yeah, I don't
because I think what happens is
they
it's like,
try to
wait, so
frame him.
she frames him for rape, and then he says, well, if I'm gonna go down for this, I might as well rape you for real,
Yeah,
which I think is exactly what was going on there. But then they seem to be having kind of hot
consensual.
consensual sex. So I'm not really clear what's going on there. But
Yeah, he pushes her in a closet. I'm like, oh man, this is dark. And then it just goes to them kind of having a nice thing. And you're like, wait, what? Yeah,
yeah, very weird. But then
that's the movie
if they
though. It's
do,
not
yeah,
consistent.
if they do have some kind of connection, even if it's kind of a tawdry, steamy affair, the fact that she executes him at the end because she chooses this like promise that she made. Yeah, there's interesting dynamics that maybe I wish they'd kept for a more consistent movie. But you mentioned the forest location at the end. I would be curious to know about the BTS of the climactic fight scene because it doesn't strike me that the film had enough of a budget for a full set or even like a smaller set with a bunch of matted backgrounds of the forest or something. So I wonder, it does seem like a real location, but I'm curious how much of the statues and the stone steps are, altered or padded for stunt safety, because I do think one of the best stunts in the movie
The
is
stair
not a
fall.
martial arts movie. It's the stair fall when
Yeah.
yeah, when Czeky's double is going down the steps.
Great stair
Yeah,
fall.
it's great. It looks genuinely painful.
That's funny you picked up on
Um,
that because in my notes I wrote great stair fall.
yeah,
And
100%.
so the statues I know weren't big enough at first, so the director had them remade. So they had enough of a
Okay.
budget to remake those statues. But that just looks like it was in the Vancouver woods because there's not really not much out there about this film. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not quite sure how much. But I mean, you can see the pads everywhere. I think this was a pretty and most of the stunts. I mean, the guy does fall through a glass table, but they do seem pretty well safe. You can see the pad work. Most of the stunts are guys getting shot and then just blowing backwards with their arms in the air.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, and then just that fight scene happens. But there are okay, so you're right. I think Kimmy's an interesting character. They talk about the blade, like, but then they're like, you're Satan, and they put a grenade, like a bomb in his pants. But he doesn't really get much to do. And then there's just I think there's too many characters. They travel all over the world because the idea of a Freeman who one of the greatest assassins ever, whose mind condition, who stops working because he meets a super hot babe, melancholy, super hot, melancholy, and available, and then he doesn't work anymore. And then, but his handler's been working for him for years, and he's kind of bummed. But they like kidnapped him, programmed him, and are using him to murder. But then Byron Mann's giving him a hard time about going rogue. It's like this is basically your
You, you know,
prisoner.
Yeah, you know what I think, and this is admittedly entirely my own sort of fan fiction version of the script, but I want it so that like Byron Mann is secretly in love with him.
Ooh,
Like
that'd be good.
romantically or not. Maybe it's
Yeah,
it's kind of a
bro
brotherly love.
love. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think that part of it is important to define what kind of love it is, but the point is that he's conflicted
yeah.
because he is essentially his partner, right? So he's the handler, and the Freeman is his ward or his responsibility, but he's falling in love so also falling in love very implausibly with this gal, but then he's later tasked to kill the Freeman as a result of that. And so he has to reckon with some emotions of his own. So he's like, I realize I love this guy, but I'm also duty bound to the organization to kill him. And that dynamic, I think, is kind of fascinating that I would have loved more of. And it's also a way to get more Byron Mann in there.
Yeah, there's just no there's like I always joke about Liam Neeson movies. I forget where I heard this, like there's no time. Like that would have been a great subplot, but then they have to spend a lot more time with the other four different countries and yakuza leaders and cops and love stories and then a late yeah. But yeah, Byron Man would have been good. But they don't really there's nothing explore because I think this director just like he liked it, he wanted to make that and he just made a superficial, interesting to look at film. And I think he got better as time progressed. But yeah, that would have been good. And also, I gotta say, if I had four pieces of art from any movie, I would want this painting of Dacascos on my wall. I'd want the bison painting from Street Fighter.
Yeah.
All right, you have to. I want the Portrait of a Lady on Fire
Okay.
from Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and then I would want the ATV guys from Royal Tenenbaums. Remember, like they're ripping up the. Remember the
Hmm.
scene with Richie when they're going, "Huh? What? Huh? What?" And there's this
I sorry, I don't remember.
Oh, well, there's like, let's see. Richie goes to Owen Wilson's house. I forget his name, and they're chatting. They're both drinking Bloody Marys, and Owen Wilson's character's on mescaline. But they just do this, huh? What? And there's these really crazy paintings on the wall. So I would want those two. I would want the bison photo, the Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and then I would want the Dacascos on here.
What about some of the artwork in The Devil's Candy?
Yeah, my guy Ethan Embry does that. All right, yeah, drop the ATV ones because yeah, all right, yeah, Bison, Devil's Candy, Freeman, Lady on Fire. I like that movie. I'm a big Ethan Embry guy. Wasted in Scream 7.
Utterly wasted in Scream 7.
Just, oh man,
Matt.
yeah, we don't need to get into that movie.
In terms of, I mean, when we talked about Street Fighter, we talked about just how bonkers the production design is, and kind of the prop master really, really shines in terms of the kind of nutty stuff that they put on screen, like the bison umbrella drinks. Like, but this one, I'd be curious to kind of get in the head of the armor because
The guns,
the guns are customized, right? They're not
yeah.
there's some art direction going on. I think that the idea of like the explosive clip demolish the weapon after each hit is kind of cool. I'm not sure, if he's also killing people with a knife, does he leave an explosive charge on the handle of the knife as well, if it's all about removing fingerprints? Oh, I got you laughing. Yeah, I mean, but the weapons are customized for this film, right? So there's something kind of interesting and unique, if we're looking for ways in which this movie kind of expresses a personality.
That's why I
I,
like movies like this. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, sorry. Go for it. Sorry if
No,
I
no, no.
interrupt.
That's it. At the other, I mean, by the same token, this movie rests on a lot of unfortunate cliches, right? Like one of my favorite action tropes, which like is the key scene in every hitman genre movie, is when his hideaway or his humble home is being attacked. It turns out the house is decked out in gear, or at least has a small weapon stash as a just in case. And of course, like this movie has that, so it leans into his cliches, right? Because hitmen have no work life separation, apparently. So on the one hand, it's very cliched. On the other hand, you get these sparks of personality that make you think, like, you know what? Maybe Crying Freeman had something going on. Yeah, I'm conflicted about this one, Mark.
If there was a working director, like a solid working action director who's good at just making functional action films, made this, I don't think it would be interesting. But I think the fact that a first time director, French director who loved films made this makes it have a personality. Like I don't know. I don't know. I don't think like Simon West would get a lot of juice out of this movie. I like Simon
Probably
West,
not. Yeah, I
but
do too, but he's kind of a journeyman.
yeah, and so it's and anybody else like I think Rennie. I love Rennie, but I don't know if he would have. Oh no, I mean he did Long Kiss Goodnight, and that movie rules.
Yeah, cliffhanger.
Yeah, Cliffhanger rules. Maybe oh yeah, a lot of characters in that. Rennie could have done it, but I'm telling you, this movie works for me because it has a personality, and the action isn't great, but it's endearing. There's just so many. I've said this 100 times, like so many random butt shots in it. The action isn't great there, but there's good ideas you can cling to, and I think that's when yeah, I don't know. I think there's enough. I really like this movie. I do. I watched it twice prepping for it. I researched it. I had a good time both times. It's like a scrappy little. I like scrappy little movies sometimes.
Yeah,
I
same.
like I like the director clearly tried, and I know that shouldn't be a barometer for whether maybe that's the right word or like a gauge for whether a movie's good or not. But you could tell the director liked the movie, like liked the product. You could tell he tried. He put a lot of work into making it look cool, which is kind of hackish, but it still gives it a personality.
Well, yeah,
There's
I
a
think you and I
silliness.
are, yeah,
Yeah.
we're drawn to, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, no.
We're drawn to kind of glimmers of personality that come through in spite of a low budget, right? It's like, because scrappy is a great word for it. You realize you've got limited resources. So how are you finding creative solutions to the fact that you can't pull this off the way a Hollywood production would? The creativity in those solutions, the ways in which you find the workarounds that you find is where you start to see glimmers of talent and personality and creativity. And I think we're attuned to that, especially in this action genre, in which so much of what you see is recycled tropes and cliches and action beats that we've seen before and certain stunts and falls. And that's why the Tchekies fall down the stairs. You realize, like, no. We've seen people fall downstairs a million times, so we know what looks legit and what doesn't.
And
That's a legit stunt.
maybe we kind of shot ourselves in the foot by talking about Drive first, because
Maybe.
by this time, Steve, by the time he directed it, Steve Wang had directed low budget films that had wonderful personalities before it. So he had a team, he had a low budget, he had a more experienced Dacascos. He and Kaneem Hardison work really well together. Brittany Murphy is just firing on
Heavenly.
all cylinders. I love her. Like Tracy Walters funny in it, and I think that they.
John Piper Ferguson.
Oh yeah, John Piper Ferguson. He's great in
jelly
it.
full of a belly full of jelly, whatever it's called. What was it called?
Belly jelly full. Wait, I forget.
Jelly full of pudding. That's what it is.
But they knew how to handle it. So this time, this guy just wasn't there yet, and I think he was still putting stuff together. And I don't know. You know what? I think the word scrappy is right for me. But there's funny moments. He goes, "I was a great potter. I was enjoying my 15 minutes of fame." And you look at his pottery, and they just bought it from Walmart. None of the pottery is exceptional in this film. It looks like the
so
most
funny.
It looks like the most generic pottery in the history of the world, and that made me laugh because they didn't have a budget to bring in more pots that looked better or more original. Like he's legitimately just showing up like regular pottery you could get. Like Pottery Barn might have better stuff. So it like the little but that's kind of endearing to me. That's a thing I see, and I didn't go, "Oh, this movie's terrible" because of that. I just smiled about it. And it like the terrible easel placement. I mean, she's on a rocky cliff with wind blowing, and she has an easel just on a boulder. And I'm not sure that painting's secured. And so it's just an odd, like there's this little moments like that kept me smiling. And I was never making fun of the movie. Even when I saw the lockups in the background or where they were coming out of, it made me happy. So I think, this movie, it has its heart in the right place. I think so. The guy probably wasn't experienced enough. The budget wasn't big enough. They did drop the budget. It was supposed to be more. They got a little bit less. This wasn't like a movie where half the budget was dropped. Like that movie Ice Pirates, like 70% of that budget was dropped. Then they still had to make the movie. So I mean, this movie's budget wasn't as high as they wanted, and a first-time director still made a pretty good film. I mean, the reviews for this aren't bad. I mean, IMDb, it's pretty high. Letterboxd, it's pretty good. So I think there's an audience for this movie. And I don't think it would have lived as long had it not been so, like 6.4 on IMDb is not bad for this. 72% Rotten Tomatoes, 3.2 Letterboxd, and
that's kind of high.
Yeah, because I think people. This sounds bad, but sometimes on Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, we talk about bad creature features that no one cares. They're just cynical exercises. This didn't feel like a cynical exercise, and I think that's why it's still enjoyed.
I sometimes have difficulty, and so it struck me that when you say there's something fundamentally strange about her placing an easel on a cliff face and just painting, like I wonder if there's an interpretation here that the Julie Condra character is legitimately kind of insane. She's this. Have you seen Gates of Heaven, the Errol Morris documentary? It's about these two women who live in a mansion, and they just they have these little shrines to their dead pets, and they're completely codependent and insane, and they just live in complete isolation from society. It's been a long time since I've seen that, so apologize if I'm mischaracterizing it, but you just wonder, she's this obviously beautiful young woman, but just lives alone in a mansion with no employment seemingly and just sits and paints? Like, is there some kind of strange mental illness that she's dealing with that makes her, and she falls in love with this assassin on the spot? That, I mean, a lot of red flags there, I would say, right?
I don't think she ever says anything interesting either.
Well, she's not interesting to begin with.
Yeah, she's just a
And so
loner.
it's yeah, it's unclear whether or not this very improbable and very spontaneous kind of faded love affair that they have is more of a reflection of her kind of neediness, or he has some kind of like, along with him being programmed. Because the idea that he's like, oh, he's like a world famous potter who then becomes an assassin is so stupid.
You said two
Right?
lines that are all timers: a world famous potter who becomes an assassin, and then you said
Yeah.
Dacascos in a jockstrap climbs the door. Like that's
Yeah. No, this is all leading to a point, right? Which is, this is all so dumb that it makes you wonder, in addition to, he's a potter, he doesn't have any training as a killer, but he becomes programmed, right? Like through hypnosis or whatever it is, and becomes the world's greatest assassin. He becomes a full Baba Yaga, But I wonder, along with those physical skills as an assassin, it also gives him an aura that makes him irresistible to women, because he straight up nearly seduces a TSA worker just by describing the process of turning mud into clay. And
yeah,
she is like, she is ready to drop her clothes
bro.
on the
Yeah,
spot, right?
I
Shout
thought
out to our TSA workers, by the way. They're having a tough time at the moment. But
I was like, if that's
um,
Paul Giamatti, he's not getting away with that.
well, no offense to Paul Giamatti,
No, but like any human being that's
any
not
human
in a movie.
being.
If I tried that, it wouldn't work. How about that?
If I lowered my round sunglasses like halfway down my nose and I said, like, am I really gonna have to stay here much longer, miss? I'm absolutely getting like taken to a back room, and they're gonna slap on the rubber gloves, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
so it doesn't have to be Paul
so
Giamatti. Yeah, it's
so
just
I'm just wondering, yeah, so all this is leading towards, when I mentioned earlier that the climbing the door with the jockstrap, like that's the kind of chaos that this movie thrives on. I sometimes have difficulty reconciling when I find a movie is just sort of mediocre in what it's doing. The thing I want to say is like, yeah, I liked it, but I wanted it to be better. But sometimes I find myself thinking, no, you know what? I liked it, but I think it needed to be worse. Which is to say, I think it needed to just be more bonkers, to be more incoherent, because then you're heading into a different category of spectatorship, right? Which is that it becomes camp. And
Mhm.
camp or trash or whatever term you want to use is its own kind of pleasure. And I do think that the attempt at turning a kind of conventional crime, international assassin, revenge type movie into high melodrama, which is where it borrows a lot from John Woo, actually does make it fun. And it turns the whole thing into basically a giant soap opera. Of course, like, it's already leaning that direction with that god awful narration.
Ugh.
But the more it leans into that direction, the more personality it potentially has. So I don't want to critique like the version of this movie in my head as opposed to the one we saw, but I do think if it had been nuttier, then we would be really singing its praises as being like, oh no, we're not arguing this is a great piece of cinema, but it is, wow, it is completely fun and bananas and worth talking about, which is where I think Street Fighter
Yes.
really, that's the territory Street Fighter occupies. So I'm not saying this needed to head in that direction, but if you're going to be this self-serious, be even more serious, because then the preposterousness of it kind of gets foregrounded in a way that makes it a bit more risible, but also a lot more fun.
I wish
Because
you
right
would
now, yeah, as it stands, this movie is sort of like, oh my God, why so much slow motion and so much heightened emotions and all the rest of it.
I wish we would have explored the emu O'Hara of it all, because she's
He's the emo character, but she's the emu
emu.
character, right?
But they just meet each other and immediately she's like, he's gonna kill me. I love him. And she a gorgeous painting. But yeah, I don't think she has any friends. She's independently wealthy.
Exactly. No one wants to hang out with emu.
Yeah.
She doesn't have girlfriends.
No.
Yeah.
She just dreams about kind of death all day.
She does have a abnormally loyal maidservant
When
lady.
she's in that bed, just not saying
Yeah.
a word. Oh, I still love it. I don't get this. I still enjoy this movie. You know, leaning into camp, it could have gone wrong, because then it could have felt. I think for me, I don't want anything else from this, I guess, because Street Fighter, people just despise that movie when it came out. I've always loved it, but it was on a wavelength people weren't expecting. This one just, I don't know. I like it. I
Well,
don't.
it's because Street Fighter. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to uh sort of there's a lot of areas in which that movie fails at what it's doing, but it was also kind of along a string of video game adaptations, right? The Double Dragon movie with coincidentally with
Dacascos.
Mark Dacascos is
Yeah.
not great. Of course, the Mario Brothers movie was a failure and everything. So people are just slating Street Fighter into the string of movies where they think like, wow, yeah, video game adaptations are uniquely bad, consistently bad. But then over time we realize like, no, pull these movies out of that context and look at them, and they have a lot of charm. I think the Mario Brothers movie I mean, it has a cult following for a reason, right? There's a lot of fun stuff going on if you remove it from this metric of like how faithful of an adaptation is it. It's like it's not. It shouldn't be measured along those lines. That's a movie we should do
I'm down. Let's do it.
if you haven't already.
No, even if I have,
Yeah.
I know I
Can I
got to get
make
you out here.
No, can I make one last point?
Yeah,
Actually,
absolutely.
it's something that struck me when you mentioned the kind of that. Oh, he's hired as an international assassin. Someone with international, I don't know, someone with a passport, as opposed to kind of a homegrown domestic Yakuza killer. And I do think Yakuza films in the 1990s are kind of explicit about these like domestic homegrown crime factions spreading out into foreign territory, because that's not at all unlike the ways in which sort of quote unquote legitimate businesses look for new markets to penetrate as the norm of how of the now international business sort of post Berlin Wall and all that. So, and you get this in a lot of films. So there's a movie called American Yakuza with Viggo Mortensen. There's another one called No Way Back with Russell Crowe. Johnny Mnemonic is doing this.
Black Rain.
Black Rain is a little bit before, but
Oh,
absolutely. Although that takes place in Japan,
yeah,
right?
it's true.
It's
Yeah.
not about the Yakuza spreading outward. And Johnny Mnemonic is also a little bit of an asterisk because it's doing it as a future society. But the fact that it presumes the future is going to look like a world where Asian crime syndicates are ruling things, it's really indicative of what the 1990s screenwriting community thought internationalized crime syndicates would look like. Actually, Drive does this too, now that I think about it.
And
So I do
that
like,
movie
yeah.
Brother with Beat when he comes over.
Yeah. That's a bit later. That's
Yeah.
2000, but coming over and like Yakuza setting up shop in LA, like absolutely, that's all part of the same kind of. It's a reflection of how crime syndicates now work in an internationalized global economy, right? So I do like this idea of these very centuries old crime families, which presumably are quite strict about like who's an insider and who's an outsider, which invariably means like there's sort of these racial purity tests that have adapted to the new global world order by essentially becoming less racially homogenous and having kind of a multiracial actor like Mark Dacascos playing the Freeman is really key here, because what it does is it makes a point about how like they say in the film he's a shapeshifter who can adopt any racial identity, and that's why that's why he's so hard to catch, right? He's so elusive because he can kind of snake his way in and out of different cultural contexts and things like that. And so, if I'm remembering that monologue correctly, and so we do talk a lot about, we've talked about Brandon Lee and now Mark Dacascos, the sort of the currency that multiracial actors, we've got Keanu Reeves, of course, the currency that multiracial actors have in this sort of kind of neoliberal global economics of 90s cinema, and then of course 90s action cinema, I think is both in keeping with the kind of a trend that's come up in the conversations you and I have, but it's also just kind of what makes this film very of the 90s, and I think that's kind of interesting. I hope that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And no, you're right. We've talked about Johnny Mnemonic, Drive. Like we definitely have a theme here with those actors and like different crime syndicates. And
yeah, and I think that's a really, I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but I think that's a very interesting dynamic that's kind of developing in the 90s, opposite to and possibly in reaction to the previous generation of action stars who were like Schwarzenegger, right? Which is very Aryan, very sort of, very like muscle bound, these impossible Nietzschean superhuman people, right? And to have these sort of much, like, very obviously handsome and fit, but they're not like gigantic muscle bound guys. Keanu Reeves is
and speed changed a lot for, I think.
Sure.
Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, Keanu Reeves doesn't really present as multiracial. I think he
Yeah.
passes for white in most things, but to have biracial or multiracial action stars coming up in the 90s, shortly after the kind of Stallones and the Schwarzeneggers, I think is fascinating. It makes for a fascinating kind of spread.
I mean, Die Hard and Point Break kicked the doors open for that, you think? And then I think Speed
For Die
further.
Hard?
Yeah, Die Hard. And I think Point Break too. I mean, Bigelow, they were quite sensitive guys in Point Break, the way she shot them. And so I think that helped kind of get rid of the whole like
The
Schwarzenegger.
super macho. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like I think Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock and Speed kicked off a whole new thing because they were so perfect together and not.
Mhm.
Also, you forgot to mention Showdown Little Tokyo.
Yeah, I mean, it is always front of mind, Mark. But you're right. I did forget to mention.
I'll be covering that movie soon.
Yeah. Well, I think that the dynamic of Showdown Little Tokyo is what matches the dynamic of Point Break, right? Because you get a very kind of square-jawed European white guy opposite what a more sensitive sort of partly Asian, less built buddy, right? So that's the Patrick Swayze, that's the Bodhi and Johnny Utah dynamic, as well as the Dolph Lundgren, Brandon Lee dynamic, right? The sort of let's buddy up a traditional white muscle-bound hero with a slightly smaller, slightly Asian sidekick. That's something kind of interesting there.
And then make him say one of the strangest lines of cinema history. Remember when Brandon
Which
Lee's
is
like,
one?
"You have the biggest
Biggest
penis
dick I've ever seen."
on
Yeah.
him." Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's so broy.
Yeah. But Dolph's reaction to it's kind of perfect. He goes, "Thanks." Like it's not. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Fist bump.
Any other final thoughts about this movie? I mean,
Nah.
I think we've covered it all.
Nah, I'm good.
All right. Cool.
R.I.P. Tchéky.
Yeah. 2025 he passed away. But yeah, you kind of blew my minds about Addams Family. That shook me for a little bit because I always thought Tim Burton directed that. I didn't know Sonnenfeld did it. But Sonnenfeld shot.
Did you look it up?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I mean, he was a cinematographer, right? I think he shot like Raising Arizona, and he's got some good credits. I think after Men in Black, he's kind of fallen off. But
he threw some heaters there for a while. But I could have, I would have put money on Tim Burton direct. If I was a pub trivia, like who directed Addams Family? Tim Burton. I just would have said it, but I would have been wrong.
Do check out, you, Mark, and your listeners, Le Doberman. It's a film I've dropped a couple times. It's Vincent Cassel and Monica Bellucci and Tchéky Karyo. It's kind of a really intense crime action extravaganza. It's really, really nutty.
And it's on Tubi.
1997, I think.
Why is she wearing a mask, Monica Bellucci?
Oh, just check it out, my friend.
Okay.
This movie is bananas.
Well, all right, I love it. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining me, Professor Mike Dillon.
Always, buddy.
Listen to our other 1990s episodes. And yeah, we got a bunch of good ones coming up. And yeah, thank you very much. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, Professor Mike Dillon.
It's pronounced Professor. Yeah.
Professor. This is Movies, Films, and Flicks. We'll see you next week.